Have you ever seen all those top 10 videos that say one Star Trek episode is just not to be missed, and then you watch it and you thought, this show is horrible? For me, that is today's episode, The Measure of a Man. After 29 years of being considered a life form, Data's status of being a life form is questioned. As usual, 1 point will be subtracted for each error, and the first point is forgetting that for Data to join Starfleet, he would have gone through rigorous testing when he was found to prove he was indeed a self-aware life form, or else it would mean Starfleet allows just any machine to join. One thing you never learn is how do they number their starbases? This is the first episode with a poker game. Geordi celebrates by performing the Picard maneuver. Yes! I don't know about the rest of you, but I'd love to have that solar system on the wall. Data is a card counter. Of course, he knows nothing about bluffing. This is horrible English. I call. But O'Brien isn't much better, is he? Of course, this is foreshadowing of the trial coming up. Riker bluffed with nothing and almost won. This is the moral of the show that Data gets to learn. The Enterprise is coming up on Starbase 173, and it is possible for several starbases to be built exactly alike. Picard goes to see Philippa while this officer gets up so he can fart. Picard talks dirty to her. He's been alone on that ship for a long time. Look closely. The Enterprise is in a close orbit around the space station. Now it's docked, so -1 point. It is extremely unlikely officers quit and go back to Starfleet as much as they do in this show, so -1 point. The exception is if they take reserve tours, but those are never mentioned. Their constant bickering about the court-martial really means they just want to have sex. -1 point for not listing Diana Muldaur as a regular. Admiral Nakamura wants her to buy him dinner. What's up with that? The Enterprise is still docked, which means I can't take a point for a teenager flying the ship. Aww. Admiral Nakamura poses like Peter Pan and sucks up to the Enterprise crew. An admiral would never randomly say that without advance notice, so -1 point. Maddox misgenders Data. This totally offends Data, and he's really cold to Commander Maddox from then on. There is no way Maddox is old enough to be on the Starfleet Review Board 28 years ago, so -1 point. Maddox says he's going to take apart Data. Everybody's like, what? Don't watch him perform the Picard maneuver. Watch the station rotating. The Enterprise was docked, so it should be rotated too, right? -1 point. The way this is phrased, it seems Maddox knew Data was created by Dr. Soong long before they realized it last year, so there's a continuity error here. Data uses a contraction, so -1 point. Maddox claims he's close to a breakthrough, but can't answer Data's first step question, so that's a big red flag. Now Riker wants to run a full diagnostic. What's going on? Maddox thinks he's a miracle worker. But Data says if you can't even answer that first question, it's probably not going to work. Both Data and Riker think Maddox is full of it. Now for the problems of this show. There is no way a starship captain and a high-ranking officer, his third in command, would not know of these transfer orders, so -1 point. And transfer orders are planned out months in advance, not for the next day, so -1 more point. There is no way he could have hidden those orders from Picard, Riker, or Data. This is an interesting shot because the Enterprise in the painting is reflected on the table. Picard has a heart-to-heart talk with Data, but Data should be able to quote all Federation and Starfleet laws that say you can't just transfer someone at will then chop them up into pieces, so -1 point. The Enterprise is docked again, so -1 point. There was nothing in the captain's log about the crew practicing docking procedures. This may be the only time Patrick Stewart says gobbledygook. And -1 point, you can stop the transfer. It happens all the time. Hollywood just really knows nothing about the military. Jean-Luc and Philippa argue like they've been married for 30 years. Does she think Data is just a machine, or is she just trying to piss off Picard? -1 point here. There is an option. He can go to JAG and dispute the orders that were done behind his back. It's her job to know that. Now she's talking dirty in the office. Aww. 1 point lost. This private door randomly opened. This is Shakespeare's Sonnet 29 that he's quoting. This is Data's way of saying, get out or I'll have you beamed into space. This is Data's way of saying, you aren't smart enough to pick your own nose without an instruction book. Data says, I quit. Maddox says, you're bluffing. You learned this from Commander Riker when you were playing poker. Data tells Maddox to pack his bags. Then Commander Maddox quotes schizophrenic poetry. The Enterprise is arriving again, still -1 point. This is what happens when you let a teenager fly the ship. Maddox calls Data's bluff and ups the ante. In reality, he goes to JAG and whines. Ironically, Maddox is trying to tell them what Data's preferred pronouns should be. Data makes that decision and no one else. Philippa uses this moment to take a jab at Picard. That's unbecoming of a JAG officer. Now Maddox complains that he is the victim for not being allowed to chop Data into little android bits and store them in a huge hard drive somewhere. This should be a red flag to a JAG officer when Maddox says he's not concerned about other people's rights, but she didn't see it, so -1 point. Another red flag. Maddox just wants to create an assembly line for his own personal profit and still hasn't proven Data won't be lost. Now another problem. Philippa refers to Data as people, but when Maddox says Data is just like the ship's computer, she does a 180, so -1 point. Now here comes that word property. Data is a Starfleet officer. She totally disregards that now, so -1 point. Data got Pop-Tarts for a going-away present. -1 point since the stars aren't moving. -1 point each since Wesley and Worf got less than 5 lines, and I think Deanna got 0. Geordi and Data have a guy moment. Aww. -1 point for using a court case that took place 100 years before Starfleet or androids. -1 point for not looking into Data's past. He would have gone through a hearing like this to prove he was a sentient life form. That's what her terrified little ensign is supposed to find out. -1 point for ruling android officers are not equal to humans. Picard now ups the ante. This episode follows poker rules more than any type of Starfleet law. -1 point for the JAG officer saying she is too lazy to do her job. Didn't she just say she wanted to make good law out here? -1 point for having Captain Picard defend. He is not an attorney. The Enterprise has a crew of 1,100 and would have its own JAG officer to do that. -1 point for having Commander Riker be prosecution. That is a conflict of interest. Maddox needs to find his own attorney. He can whine to Admiral Nakamura about that. She is totally wrong about throwing non-attorneys into this situation. Riker refuses. Yes! It turns out Philippa is concerned that Data is a Cylon. Riker says, "Oh, now you're upping the ante and I have to call your bluff. You're on." Now she tells Riker if he can't do the job he's not qualified to do, she will order the Enterprise's 3rd officer to be melted into soup. The Enterprise is again docked, so -1 more point. Data isn't programmed to have emotions, but he clearly shows disappointment here. The door magically knows when not to open, so -1 point. Riker gets his deck of cards, but does he have nothing this time like in the card game? We will soon find out. This trial takes place a day and a half after they arrive. Totally inappropriate, so -1 point. The JAG office is the battle bridge, so -1 point. So Data's memory storage comes out to 100,000 terabytes. Now Philippa talks about how fast she is. Data bends the rod of parse steel. However, it's not bent nearly as far as it was when Data had it in his hand, so -1 more point. Riker says, "I'm going to remove Data's hand." Data's thinking, "Oh hell no, you didn't just say that, did you?" -1 more point. Data doesn't come apart that easy. Here is Data's arm. Captain Picard's thinking, "I'm screwed." Maddox is thinking, "Yeah, Picard, you're screwed." His off switch is closer to the center of his back, so -1 point. Picard's like, "I gotta go throw up." Oh look, the Enterprise is still docked. Picard goes to Guinan for counseling. Of course, they should go to Deanna for counseling, but she doesn't have any lines in this show. Guinan jumpstarts Picard's case, which all of them have seen the red flags but didn't put the pieces together. In reality, it's Data's humanity that's in question, not what Maddox plans on doing with the future androids. I'm sure Whoopi Goldberg pushed to say these lines, but she's not from Earth, and Worf is a Klingon. I think it should have been Geordi to make these comments. Of course, LeVar Burton was on Roots, so the producers might have wanted to skip that connection. Picard gives a really good speech, then calls Data to testify. He says, "Data, these are my medals. Why do you have them?" And Data says, "Well, I just wanted them." Suddenly, it turns out Data is on trial for theft. Data says, "It wasn't me, it was the left fielder." Then Picard says, "Go ahead and tell us about Tasha, Data. We already know your dirty little secret." Then Data tells the court about some of his other programs. Then the court thinks, well, maybe we should make more androids and have one in every bedroom. Have one on every ship. They could be used as really good stress relief for the girls on those really long space flights. Riker's like, "Yeah, I know what you're thinking." And Maddox is like, "Hey, maybe Data can teach me a thing or two." The Palm Reader says Maddox is stationed at the Daystrip Institute, so why is he here on Starbase 173, and Data's orders also go to 173, so -1 point. Now someone named Major Papers is involved. Maddox loses this argument quick. He just goes around in circles. Then Picard asks the left fielder why is he self-aware.
The left fielder's name, why?
Picard slams Maddox's case. Yes! Then it makes Philippa question why she's sentient. The only problem with this argument is that it stops advancement in cybernetics dead in its tracks. Now Maddox thinks Data is the third baseman. The court rules the same thing they did when Data was found 28 years ago. All she had to do was look it up and they would have saved thousands of wasted tax dollars out there in deep space. Philippa says, yeah, the narrator's right. This was a big waste of time and I already knew the answer. But I can use this case to justify my job out here, and I really wanted to see Picard sweat for no reason. Data says to Maddox, screw you. Maddox says he'll cancel the orders, which are probably fake anyways, and Picard gets the girl. Yes! The Enterprise is returning again, so minus one more point. Data invites Riker to the celebration on the holodeck, even though they don't have real food there. Riker brags about how great he is in the courtroom. Data says, no, you were bluffing the whole time and the court folded, just like you predicted in the poker game at the beginning of the show. Riker says, not really, but that's a good analogy. And the last point is lost since the Enterprise is strangely docked one more time. Clyde Kusatsu has 300 screen credits and we'll see him again 2 more times. Amanda McBroom has 30 screen credits including MASH and Heart to Heart, but has 50 music credits including The Rose sung by Bette Midler in 1977. Brian Brophy has 50 screen credits including Armageddon, The Shawshank Redemption. He doesn't make any more appearances but is mentioned a couple of times, and it is possible that he got into the ship's computer and met this guy and used them to create this guy. You never know. The Measure of a Man. They play poker with Data's life. Many Trekkies get all giggly about how great this show is, when in reality it shouldn't have been made at all since Data went through this years ago. It gets a score of 59%. This would have been a much better episode if they went back in time to when Data actually applied for Starfleet. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button. And I'll see you again soon.